Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. It's currently 7 o'clock. And before we start this meeting, I think it's something to note. This will be our last meeting that we ever have in this gymnasium with the new hub. The new hub will be open, opening ceremony is January the 7th and that. So please, I hope everybody can attend. It's an amazing facility, and it's really something where it's coming together really, really nicely. So this will be our last meeting here. I'd like to call to order the regular council meeting for Tuesday, December the 5th. It's currently 7 o'clock. Could I get someone to approve the agenda? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Public input. To encourage civic engagement, council welcomes your participation in the public portion of this meeting. This is an opportunity for all you in the audience, if you're interested in making any comments, not questions, just comments about anything that's on tonight's agenda. This would be the time to do so. Please limit comments to 2 minutes and save any questions for question period later in the meeting. I'll open up public input. Sorry, Ms. Elric? Or? Ran out of copies? Oh. Okay. Yeah, we do have a QR code, Ms. Elric said, so, and that. Anybody, if you want to come up and just line up here and provide comments, just if you could state your name and address, please. The microphone is right here by the, yeah, sorry, we had, the school is right in the middle of a dance audition thing, so that's why the gym is laid out as it is, so. Please go ahead.
Thanks. Jurgen Dirkten, 1815A East Road. These are the main points in a letter to Mayor and Council by Dr. Lynn Burton on December 5th. She's unable to attend council meetings, and without notice, the deadline for written comments was changed from 4 p.m. till 12 noon, and her submission was considered late. Point 1. Recent provincial legislation in Bill 44 reminds municipalities of the primacy of the official community plan. This Icona proposal for density is totally out of sync with the semi-rural vision of the Anmore OCP as articulated in the Metro Vancouver Regional Context Statement. Maybe it is time to go back to basics and update our official community plan consistent with the new provincial legislation. Point 2, turning a verdant 150 acres of environmentally sensitive land with numerous watersheds and a mature forest canopy into an urban community of 3,300 residential units with 5,100 to 6,700 people and commercial and public buildings is also out of sync with the Anmore housing needs assessment, which calls for 17.5 new residential units a year. Point 3, Anmore Council could simply remove the special study overlay like Port Moody Council did on their 82-acre portion of the Ioko lands. They proceeded with the existing zoning and removed the David Avenue extension. Point 4, finally, how much more consulting do Anmore residents need until we get it right for council? The Save Anmore group presented a 900-plus person petition to council on February 2022 asking for a yes/no referendum on the proposed Icona OCP amendment with the October municipal election. None was held. The overall conclusion of the village's own consultations by Mickelson Consulting in April 2021 showed that, quote, the majority of residents do not want to proceed at this time, end quote. Icona has told us their vision for Anmore South, and we listened. Gillick has told us their vision for Burrard Commons, and we listened. Brilliant Circle Group has told us their vision for Ioko lands, and we listened. The same owners, the same vision,
I'm going to ask
just
you
different names.
If you could wrap it up. That's
Done.
good. Perfect. Great timing. Thank you very much. Any other public input?
Hello, Council. Ray Houle, 2280 East Road, since 1980. I do not understand why the majority of this council seems to have their minds already set to push this urbanized development by Icona through. To me, it would be like putting the cart before the horse in regard to allowing this to happen before the developer can show Anmore how they would have up to 3,000, let alone 6,000 or more residents access these lands without Burt Flynn access and without impacting every single resident in a negative way, especially in regards to traffic. Please make them show us now and not after an approval. Secondly, urban versus rural. This is by far one of the most important decisions Anmore will ever make after making the decision to not amalgamate with Port Moody. It would be an outrageous decision by this council to move forward on changing our designation without a referendum on this issue. And I urge council to listen to all the residents and be sure to have a referendum on this issue. Then we would all know the true desires of the residents and not the temporary council of the day. I thank you for your service to the residents of Anmore.
Any other public comments? If you could just name and address, please.
Whitney Robinson of 2855 Sunnyside Road. I guess I'm here because I am shocked at such a large commitment to zoning changes in an area that I think most people come to live in because of the rural aspect of our small village. And I think if you wanted to live in a high-rise and have walkability, you can do that in Port Moody with really no problem at all. And in fact, there is an unlimited amount of condos that are for sale there and will continue to be for sale for the foreseeable future. But I think if you want a place where your kids can walk to school or you can have a quieter pace of life without that sort of city feel with the proximity of groceries and things not too far away, I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to Anmore in general. And I find it shocking that the urban zoning would be approved in this way with very little infrastructure improvement, at least on Port Moody's end, as we're reliant on those roads to come in here. So I would really advise everybody to take a think about what that looks like long term and the strain on the existing lake and all of that stuff that happens in the summer. I think it's insane. So anyway, thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comments before we close on and move on to the agenda, please?
Although I'm not a resident of
name and
Anmore,
address.
my name is Simona Niculescu and I live in Burnaby.
Okay.
So although I am not a resident of Anmore, I have decided to speak today because me too, I am shocked by what is probably going to happen here. I have read attentively the official community plan amendment application, and everything that is stated in, almost everything in that OCP community plan is in contradiction with the proposed development. And the most important is, I'm quoting direct quote from page 14, the goal is to create a compact urban area. I repeat, compact urban area. Compact urban areas are high density areas. So the plan is to transform a forest directly into a compact urban area. This is unbelievable. I cannot understand what is happening. I have been coming here to Bunsen Lake and to Anmore for the past 10 years, almost twice a week. And I do appreciate the beauty, the natural beauty of this place. And I'm sure the locals love their place as it is. not even semi-rural, it's actually a rural area, and I'm sure they want to keep it this way. Everything in the plan comes in contradiction. Nothing is sustainable, nothing is environmentally friendly, nothing makes any sense. Let's not fool ourselves. It's all about money. It's all about money.
Please.
Yes, I'm talking to you.
Please.
I'm talking to you, Icona Properties.
Hey, excuse me, it's a public hearing. You're supposed to be talking
Yes,
to us
so-
and not the audience. Please.
Yes, I'm talking to everyone, not only to you. I am addressing the council, but I want everybody to hear me because we all know it, including Icona Properties,
Good.
including the former mayor of Port Coquitlam.
Good. Thank you very much. Anybody else? If you could, those people wanting to, if you could just line up behind the speaker so we can move this along a little bit quicker. Anybody wanting to speak of public input, if you could do that, please. Thank you.
Hi, Ryan Froese, 2110 Sunnyside. I see. Hi, Ryan Froese, 2110 Sunnyside. I see this is a first reading on a very large proposal. I would like to see what the proponent brings forward in this first reading, but when we get that information, I think that's where we really have to talk to the public and make sure that's what we want, whether that be a referendum or more of these meetings. But I'm in favor of seeing it move forward just to this first reading and seeing what they really have planned for the property.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to speak. I am Harriet Chang. I live at 147 Fern Drive in Anmore. I've lived here for 15 years. Anmore is paradise. I am so grateful to be here. This is the most special place I've ever lived in my life. Almost every day, I walk in forests, I look at trees, I smell, I touch. I feel incredibly grateful and fortunate. Yesterday, I was walking through the forest that is being talked about being taken down, and it broke my heart. And I looked up at the trees and the branches, and I just can't. I'm just horrified. I'm horrified at the thought of it being ripped out. It breaks my heart to see the forest that was taken down beside the village hall as well. I don't understand why that went down. And I know that's separate, but I'm just thinking we need to be so careful about protecting our forests, because once they're down, they're down. I also think about transportation. When I drove home tonight from work, there were cars in front of me, there were cars behind me, and I just can't even imagine what transportation would be like coming into Anmore on our two routes when we added a few extra thousand people. I know that there's talk about maybe putting a rec center, or who knows, a library, or more expanding the fire department. Who knows what we would do if we had this extra tax base. Personally, as a resident, I don't want those things. I have those things. I can drive to Port Moody, I can go to Coquitlam. I chose to be in Anmore to be away from all of that. This is paradise. I don't want it to change, and maybe I'm selfish, but I'm thinking about my children and their children and our future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Tim Laidler. I currently live in Cedarbrooke, but we own property on East Road now. I grew up here in Anmore. I attended Anmore Elementary. Family moved here in the mid-90s. And yeah, it was an amazing, amazing community to grow up in. I remember running around in nighttime in the streets and having lots of fun up here, and it was always a very different experience growing up in Anmore than it was in Port Moody or Coquitlam. You know, my dream has always been to raise my family in Anmore, and you know, certain things happened in life that sort of changed that. And you know, one of the speakers said that it's about money, and you know what? They're right. This is about money. This is about affordability. What happened to me and sort of a lot for my generation was 9/11. I was on a school bus heading down to Glen Eagle when we saw 9/11 happen. Within the next 12 months, 5 guys from Anmore, before our 18th birthday, all joined the Canadian Forces. Myself and one of them ended up in Afghanistan. I did 13 years altogether in the forces, came back, created a counseling program across Canada for veterans, all tremendously rewarding and work that I'm very proud of. But it took me out of the housing market. When my friends were buying condos and settling down and building roots and communities, I and a lot of other people, including children of some of the people here today, were in the military serving overseas. We come back to our communities where I would love to raise my family and see a single family home in Anmore over $3 million. It's about the money. We can't afford that. And we do want to live in the nature that I grew up in, but I can't afford a single family home, and my friends can't afford that, so we need another option. So I'm calling to ask Anmore Council to consider these other options that perhaps mean more density, and that means changed life for every one of us, but that might allow some younger families to come back to Anmore and make it affordable. Thank you.
Yeah. And a big thank you for your service.
Many of the, 1042 Magnolia Way. My name is Carl Jovanovic. I've been a resident of Anmore now for about 14 years, and my kids have been gone through this school, gone through the high school, and this is my first time coming to speak to something like this because for a number of the reasons that have already been mentioned, there's so many of them. And I didn't know the formality that I had to prepare something at the very beginning, but there's been about 10 really good points that are the same ones that I've been asking myself every single morning since I got this. And this big block that's here, this black blot that's been sitting on my table.
Yeah.
I don't really need a microphone.
Yeah, it's just so because it's streamed.
Yes, so I've been looking at this black blot of 150 acres. That's 150 soccer fields where 6,000 people are going to go. In the middle of the road, would I drive down at least 2 to 3 times a day? And I'm not seeing how that's going to happen with the infrastructure, the poor animals that are in that area, the beautiful nature of this community that I came to love when I was here the first number of years. It's gone to such a point now that I'm actually scared to come up here and speak. I'm not sure why, because I haven't done anything wrong. I somehow feel there's an intimidation factor of how we are approached and addressed from the little bit I've seen even this evening. I have a view that's different than other people's views. I should not be attacked for my views or have people laugh or joke. About affordability, by the way, and I thank you for your service, sir. Just let me finish.
We have 2 minutes.
Okay, well, I'll finish up.
Wrap it up.
I have the
Thanks,
gift
Carl.
for the gab. I'm a school teacher.
Thanks, Carl.
But I'm just going to tell you straight up, affordability, please. Suderbrook I looked at recently as an option, $1,000 a square foot. I live in a nice house here that's doubled in value over a number of years. Affordability is not going to happen with this new project. I won't echo all the other ones because I only have 2 minutes, but there's a lot of the traffic, the infrastructure, all these other issues, and this has actually drawn me, this black dot has drawn me to come and speak tonight and say my 2 bits. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Please.
Peter Ludman, 200 Hemlock Drive. I've been coming here since the 60s to Bunsen and built my first home here in the late 80s. What I'd really like to say is I would support going for the first reading of this in order for us to be able to address the valid concerns on both sides of people's desires for the village of Anmore, and for us to be able to make much more informed decisions, whether or not affordability is something that we're talking about or the support of infrastructure. No matter what we do, the Iacona lands will be developed. We have no say on that. Whether or not there's a benefit for more green space that we acquire from that, or supporting our tax base, or for whatever reason. So I think if we give it first reading, I think that allows us to open up the conversation much better, and hopefully we can have a civilized conversations on, and everybody in this community to be able to talk about their concerns and address those concerns in a reasonable way. So I just wanted to say I would support first readings of this bylaw. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, seeing no further speakers, we'll get on then with the agenda. Before I was amiss to, the Village of Anmore would like to open our meetings by recognizing the many Indigenous peoples of our area, including the following First Nations with communities that are located in the region that we now know as Metro Vancouver: Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam. Further, we would like to honor the important place in history occupied by the many territorial keepers of these lands and waters around us since time immemorial. So we're now moving on, we're moving on to delegations. Delegation A is Placemark Design Studio Incorporated. Paul Fentz and Theo Vincent to present an overview of the Icona OCP amendment application. Welcome.
Well, good evening. My name is Paul Fensky, and as principal of Placemark, I represent the planning team commissioned by Icona to prepare the OCP amendment for Anmore South before you this evening. Our presentation, being of significant import to the community, as we've just heard, may extend beyond the allotted 5 minutes. And so at this point in time, I would request possible extension from council to present an extended presentation that does a fulsome reflection of the application before you.
Could I get someone to motion forward an extension? Move seconded. Any discussion? No, any discussion on the extension? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Please proceed.
Great, thank you very much. Is there any way of focusing the screen? Barry? Oh, okay, very good.
Oh, is this the same? Oh.
Yeah. Same.
Yes, so the same slides, 19 slides in all, which are really a summary of the material that was presented to public in April and have formed part of the submitted OCP application in early May, are then provided in printed form to council and are also available to members of the public tonight. Well, our work over the last 12 months really has focused on getting to know the community of Anmore, understanding the land, understanding its policy framework within the Metro Vancouver, towards outlining a future vision for Anmore South that meets the community's ever-changing needs while securing a lasting legacy of new parks, environmental areas, shops, and services for Anmore going forward. As we've heard tonight, the designation of a special study area given to those 150 acres within the official community plan has caused lots of discussion in the community. And as we heard tonight, there's lots of opinions and concerns. And while apprehension and concern are natural and even understandable for a project of this scale, positional thinking will not allow Anmore to move forward or meet its responsibilities for its own citizens or within the region as a whole. The purpose of the OCP amendment is not to complete the conversation, but really to start it at the OCP level, the highest level in the community that serves as a guide for all future discussions, including future detailed planning. The plan for the 150 acres designated as a special study area in the OCP is intended to be expressed in a form that responds to the needs and priorities of this ever-changing community and region. Through not a fait accompli, but rather through an extended public conversation, including future neighborhood planning and engagement, in order to best respond to the needs of the community with urgently needed housing that meets different lifestyles, life stages, and incomes, as well as local jobs, local commercial, all set not within sprawling acreages, but rather within a walkable, more compact form, linked together not simply through streets, but perhaps more importantly, through a network of greenways, protected green belts, and trails linking new commercial hearts, community centers, as well as recreational parks. The proposal before Council tonight is really trying to answer the question, how do we accommodate change in a way that meets regional growth objectives, ensuring that Anmore does its part, but in doing so protects Anmore's existing semi-rural character by focusing growth within the special study area. Next slide. Placemark, my firm, has been working with communities and clients for over the last 30 years, working with the land, working with the economics and the community priorities to craft master plans that fit their place. From Burke Mountain in Coquitlam to Predator Ridge in the Okanagan, Victoria's Royal Bay to Mission Silverdale. Our work is one of conversation, understanding how land development can benefit communities over time. And that's really the challenge before each of us, is how do we change the way that we've developed and seek after something greater, something that we all need, sustainability. Of course, our work, next slide, is supported by a seasoned team of professionals covering from environment to geotechnical concerns, civil engineering, archaeology, right through to transportation and traffic. And that work, next slide, is intended to try and meet the rising challenges of an ever-changing region. As we've heard tonight, and as each of you well know, Anmore is celebrated for its small-town character, its forests, and its semi-rural lifestyle with local schools and what is a very exciting new village hub, a community gathering spot. And yet even Anmore in this bucolic setting is not free from the challenges of living today, including the cost of housing. And not only the cost of housing, but the lack of housing within Anmore to meet differing life stages and lifestyles, as well as incomes. And that's not to mention the lack of commercial shops that pay taxes to the village, in addition to its car orientation and its rather limited but important tax base. The provincial housing crisis has only made the challenge more urgent. And I believe that it's really through strategic planning, including future neighborhood planning on those lands, that sufficient community understanding and discussion will come out in order to entitle a future plan that the community can really rally around. Next slide. Today, the plan sits with existing zoning of RS1. The opportunity within the OCP is this special study area, that unique opportunity, and the only one that exists within Anmore, in order to accommodate future growth with urban services of regional water and regional sanitary. Next slide. The OCP presents an opportunity to have a made in Anmore solution, not a made in Burnaby or a made in Vancouver solution. And that's really presented within the context of the special study area. And it begins with really inviting the community to participate in a neighborhood planning process, to unlock and understand the potential of those lands, one step at a time. The OCP amendment does not confer development rights. It really establishes a guide for the future, which will only be achieved through future community engagement and neighborhood planning. Next slide. Of course, each of us has to acknowledge our role, independent of where we live, and that is to start seeking sustainability in meaningful ways, including within our communities and their footprints on the earth. And that really translates into working with nature in order to support local lifestyles in a way that lives more lightly on the land. Next slide. Of course, the unique opportunity of Anmore is accentuated by the unique opportunity of the SSA itself. This lower southwest corner of the village, below surrounding neighbors, with only a 5-minute walk to Burrard Inlet, adjacent to Port Moody's Ioko lands, all means that this has significant import for the future of both Anmore as well as Ioko and Port Moody. There is an opportunity for the second and third growth forests to provide significant retreat with forested trails and nature preservation, including buffers from existing neighbors and neighborhoods. The scale at 150 acres combined with a consolidated ownership allows comprehensive planning of these lands within the context of Anmore's needs. Next slide. The work to date has been rigorous and technical to try and understand the form and nature of the lands, including its environmental resources. Of course, further study is still needed, and that's why the OCP amendment is not the end of the conversation, but really the first step. Next slide. The OCP amendment, even in the work that has been done to date, proposes protecting what's important, as we've heard tonight, including 50% of the land as publicly dedicated green network, linked together with parks and natural areas, greenways, forested buffers, including 9 acres for community recreation and gathering. These are all things that Anmore deserves and needs, both today and into the future. And that network can be connected not simply by streets, but rather by extensive greenways and trail networks, ensuring pedestrian access as well as environmental enhancement and compensation. Next slide. Servicing and transportation are critical issues. And working with Appleton and Martin and Bund Transportation Services, there is a way of working with the community, both with Anmore, Port Moody, and the surrounding region, to ensure that these lands have safe municipal water, as well as a wastewater system, combined with livable streets and trails to provide the needs of the community well into the future. Next slide. The land use plan focuses on housing diversity with a new community heart, as seen here. Those areas of the darker brown, the new commercial heart, gathering area supported by a new community center, all located off of Sunnyside Road, in the center of the neighborhood, and yet still fully linked both to the elementary school, existing neighborhoods, and the new community hub. Neighborhood planning will refine these land uses presented here with accompanying policies to ensure that we deliver on the community amenities and develop these lands over the next 25 years in a manner that's responsible and accountable, not only to council, but to the people of Anmore. Next slide.
About 5 more minutes. I'm sure it gives you the 15.
Thank you. The sketches outlined within the OCP include mixed-use villages that offer opportunities not only for business but also leisure, a place to celebrate what Anmore provides. Next slide. It assumes pedestrian-first neighborhood streets with generous sidewalks, tree-lined streets, and homes that face the street, making the public realm safe at all times of the day, including for kids coming back and forth to school. Next slide. It includes the integration of neighborhood parks and forest with different types of homes, ground-oriented homes like duplexes and townhomes, as well as apartments, all set within the forest canopy. Next slide. And it includes community parks, substantial community parks, the size in order to accommodate soccer fields, dog parks, as well as a variety of other amenities, all linked together through substantial public pathways. Next slide. Considering the growth not in the short term but in the long term, over 25 years, those special study areas, as outlined in the OCP amendment, provide an opportunity to bring new housing into Anmore, not at the expense of existing residents or existing properties, but concentrated within a walkable footprint, including new civic facilities and a choice of housing tenures, including rental, below-market units, as well as an Anmore resident-first policy. One that looks to the needs of the fire department with up to 15 dedicated units for the volunteer fire department. Shops and services that would accommodate not only local jobs, but also local business. A sustaining population so that Anmore is doing its part within the region, and also a population that helps sustain this school within the community. Significant local employment, as well as a positive cash flow for the needs of the local government. A park system that boasts over 9 acres of developed neighborhood park, as well as an additional 62 acres of protected and dedicated natural features, all linked through over 4 kilometers of accessible greenways and trails. And of course, in addition to parks and trails, a transportation system that really puts the pedestrian first, with a potential for community shuttles as well as safe cycling routes. Next slide. This is an opportunity to start the conversation on what is the next 25 to 50 years of need within this community and how it can play its role within an ever-changing region. We look forward and are available to answer questions at Council's request. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll open it up. I'll open it up to council. Any questions to the delegation? No. Councillor Trowbridge.
Just to be crystal clear, the OCP amendment, as you said multiple times, just starts the process. There will be public engagement when we start talking about things like neighborhood plans, et cetera. The public will be involved all the way down the path. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that's a requirement both within the OCP as well as reflected in the OCP amendment application itself.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cryer.
Thank you. A bit further to Councillor Trowbridge's comment. So the concerns that we've been hearing, obviously we share with traffic, accessibility, those are all things that we will address as we go through the process of community engagement, the neighborhood plan, all of the many, many details and opportunities we have. We'll sift through those at that time, correct?
Correct. In fact, there's very little choice to do otherwise.
Right.
These are real issues. They're stubborn issues. And Anmore, like many communities, have to work their way through it. Icona's land and its position and designation with both existing zoning, but more importantly, the SSA, the Special Study Area, provides a safety valve to consider growth in a way that does not take away from Anmore, but rather adds to it. And as you've just mentioned, transportation, parks, environment, housing, and servicing are all critical to figuring that out.
Thank you. I have lots more questions, but I think I'll wait until Mr. Boyd gives his presentation, and then we'll take those forward.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Weberink, and then we'll go to Councillor Richardson.
And maybe just for clarity for the crowd mostly, this is the start of a very long process, a process that we control, and a process that could be killed by us at any time, including right at the very end, correct?
That's correct, and that's why it's important to begin, so that council and the community can begin to debate and understand the merits of how best to go forward on these lands.
Great, thank you.
With what I know as facts. The special study area isn't there to support regional growth. It's something that Anmore put in place years ago to do something different with. It wasn't specifically said for regional growth. I'm always worried about the cart and the horse and who comes first. And you're sort of saying, after we get down this path, we'll talk about transportation and we'll talk about sustainability and all these other things. And to me, the number one critical issue is the transportation. Like, I don't know how you start this conversation
Please don't interrupt, please. Thank you.
without understanding what's happening with Ioko Road. There was a study done in 2018 when Port Moody closed off Burt Flynn Park. They said that the road can support a maximum of 100 units down at the end of it. 3,700, in my math, is quite a bit bigger than 100. I had a conversation with Mayor Lady of Port Moody the other day, and she said there's no possible way to widen that road. So what's left? Like, you need, or Anmore needs, or the community needs, the province, Metro Vancouver, the Port Authority, and everybody else to figure out, is there a way to bring transportation here? And for the audience, I'm not against the development. I look at what happened on the North Shore. 100 years ago, it was a bunch of trees. Somebody built a bridge, and it got developed. But the infrastructure requirements came first. And I'm greatly worried going down this path, whatever happens, we will do a Coquitlam to Port Coquitlam, where you do Burke Mountain, you put a bunch of roads and traffic through Port Coquitlam, you have all the Coquitlam residents using Port Coquitlam's facilities, schools, and everything else, and it's a mess. And I think you have to start at the beginning first. With respect to the OCP and the discussion, we can have that discussion without Icona's involvement. And in fact, it was proposed about 3 years ago that we would do this without the developer. And it didn't happen. So now we're in the situation where we have a dog and we have a tail, and I'm a bit worried that the tail is now wagging the dog. And I hope we can get back to where we're the dog. Now, it really doesn't have any things, but why isn't transportation done? You say you're going to do a study. It should have been first. If we're going to have a financial benefit to the village, it should have been done first. If we're going to meet the regional growth strategy perspective, which my understanding is like 20 houses a year, is not 3,500. So why weren't they done first?
Is that a question?
Yes.
Councillor Richardson? I think the question is answered by the fact that no one party, in my experience of doing this for 25 years around the province and around the world, can solve these. These are complicated issues that require both private sector and public sector, regional authorities, and local communities to discuss and understand a way forward. So really the OCP amendment is but the beginning of a conversation in order to wrestle and figure out how best a future can be mapped out. It would be unfortunate for Anmore to be dictated its future by the city of Port Moody, simply because Port Moody has roads that connect to Anmore. There's a need in Anmore, as we've already heard tonight, for a change. Rather than simply a reliance model on surrounding communities like Port Moody to satisfy commercial and jobs and transportation and housing, that responsibility also rests within the village of Anmore. And we believe that these special study area lands, which as you well know are already zoned residential, and if it was pursued as large-scale residential, would only really be adding to the challenges presented in Anmore. That really the opportunity of the OCP amendment is to begin to tackle these issues and map out a common future that aligns public interests in private support and capacity for the future, because that's really how the region builds. That's how every community builds. So we're not imposing a vision, we're suggesting these are important discussions to have, and the OCP application is but the beginning of that process.
Okay, so one more then. So in this, you add, depending 6,000 to 7,000 people, depending on what it is. If you do the division, that leaves like 1.3 people per unit, which is not a bunch of young families, it's a bunch of single people, or a bunch of retired old people as a couple. So I don't think it addresses the family issue. My major concern is from, other than traffic, which is number one, is the recreation facilities and amenities. We have issues with the fact that we have to use Port Moody's ice rink, Port Moody's track, Port Moody's soccer field, Port Moody's, swimming pool, Coquitlam. There are no amenities in here other than I think 1/10 of a soccer field that's any kind of sort of sports field. So it just means we have more people driving down Port Moody's roads using Port Moody and Coquitlam's facilities. And I don't think that's right.
I would encourage you, the councillor, to review the opportunities on the land and what's being proposed, even at this high level, that's in line with community need, regional need, as well as your own OCP. And it goes far beyond 1/10 of a soccer field. And that's really, again, the purpose of beginning this conversation, in order to sort out where are the priorities? How do we thread this challenging needle of both regional housing crisis as well as sustainability? How do we live differently on the land? And Anmore is not immune to that challenge.
Yeah.
And we, in our experience, would love to try and begin a conversation, not of positional bickering, but rather interest-based understandings and discussions in order to forge a common path forward, one that aligns public interest and need with private capacity to build.
Okay, well, thank you very
Good.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Somebody could turn that off, so or do we have another? Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, we'll move on. Adoption of the minutes. The minutes of the regular council meeting held on November 21st, 23. Could I get someone to move those minutes? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Is there any business arising from the minutes? See none. We'll move on to consent agenda. We have 2 items on the consent agenda. Could I get someone to move the consent agenda? Moved, seconded. Anybody want to pull anything on? No? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We're now on to legislative reports. 9A, Anmore South, OCP Amendment Bylaw number 686-2023. Mr. Boyd's got a presentation.
Thanks, Mike.
Or do you want me to say a few comments, or do you want to go first, or? I'll wait till after you're done.
All right, perfect. Okay, thank you, Your Worship. So I'm here tonight just to give you an overview of the applicant's application. So just generally, the report that was submitted to council, this is the highlights of the report. I thought I'd just do a presentation instead of just reading through my report to be a bit more engaging. So if council have any questions and they'd like to stop me as I go through the report, please feel free to stop me now, or there'll be questions at the end of the report. Okay, so one of the things I want to emphasize as we go forward in this process is the objectives of a first reading. The first reading, as has been said a lot tonight, is about the conversation starter. It is, first off, we have received an application from a proponent, and if it meets the legislative requirements, we as staff and you as council are obligated to hear that application. So that's one reason that we're here. No matter if we like it or don't like it, we have to listen and we have to at least consider the application. So that's the reason that we're here tonight, and it's important to understand that. And as we go through, it's up to council as we present and to consider the bylaw to decide if we want to give a first reading. And the first reading, has been said a number of times tonight, is the start of the conversation. First reading does not mean that there has been a decision made. First reading means that we're willing to consider what is on the table in front of us and move the conversation forward. So it's an important consideration as we move forward tonight. Okay, I'll be brief on the background. So Anmore South, currently known as IOCO lands within our OCP, has a designation of a special study area. It was provided in Metro 2040. It's an overlay on top of what we call rural designation. Rural designation means it is not with an urban containment boundary. The urban containment boundary generally means that it is serviced by a sewer, regionally, which would be Metro Vancouver. Okay, in May 2023, we received an application from Icona. The amendment met the requirements as we took it into our system. And then following that, we as staff provided an introductory report to council in July 2023. In August 2023, we engaged consultants in a number of different areas for the application to have certain consultants review the applicable pieces to the professions. And so, as we all know tonight, here in December, this is the first reading of the presentation to council. So again, I want to stress, this is Icona's application, not staff's application or council's application. This is what has been presented to us tonight. So generally, the application presented to staff and council was a comprehensive submission. It covered a number of considerations. Within that, there was geotechnical considerations, archaeological, environmental, amenities, retail analysis, transportation review, fiscal impacts, consultation requirements, and a geophysical review. Now, I want to stress that these are very high-level reviews at this point in time. To some people who may have read the application, they may have actually caused more questions than answers, and that's okay, that's good. That's what the process is there for, is to make sure that we go through, we do a really comprehensive review as staff, as council, and as the public. So on top of that, as outlined in the delegation earlier, about 47% of the land in their application is saying to be dedicated to the municipality. That's in different forms. That is something that can be debated and reviewed as we go forward. The build-out is roughly 25 years, and as stated earlier, about 31 to 3,500 homes could be placed within the special study area. Okay, so as many people have noted tonight, our current OCP says certain things, and perhaps the application is in contradiction to our existing OCP. Perfectly frank, that's okay. That's why we have an amendment process for council to consider and decide if it's something we'd like to review and amend our existing OCP. So as stated a number of times, there's a semi-rural character, as mentioned a number of times throughout the current OCP. Our OCP also talks about managing growth and focus on innovation proposals and forms of small density development, and does not expect to absorb significant portions of the regional growth. Okay. Now, with that in mind, Anmore also has a special section within the OCP entitled IOCO. We now refer to it as Anmore South. So again, it's a special study area. Just for a little bit of context for the public, a special study area, the only real meaning attached to it, it means that it lowered the bar to be able to enter into the urban containment boundary and change the designation on the land to general urban. This lowered the bar to 51% vote within the regional board. So that's really the main context of the SSA. So the SSA also talks about environmental preservation. Our OCP also talks about sustainable development and making sure that whatever is placed within there is sustainable with regards to building materials. Our OCP also talks about a walkable community linking throughout the neighborhood that might be produced within there, and also integration into the existing community. So there was consideration of previous councils about what might happen on this land. Okay, so Icona's amendment directly references our OCP. They emphasize environmental preservation. They again talk about publicly dedicated land, 47%, or there's some numbers here, or roughly 71 acres of land. Focuses growth for Anmore within the SSA. There's a reference to a mix of housing types. That's something that we should talk about more. Again, there's reference to pedestrian cyclist first public realm, and it's alignment with our existing OCP policies of IOLU 1 to 4, as I've stated before. 1 and 2 don't really have very much relevance anymore because they refer to David Avenue Connector, which, as mentioned earlier tonight, that right-of-way was dissolved by Port Moody Council a couple of years ago, so that's no longer in place. Okay, so the OCP versus the application. So again, within our OCP, we have designated Anmore South as hillside residential. Hillside residential generally is noted as providing some increase in density compared to what we call the valley floor within Anmore, so that's the RS1 zone. Our current OCP talks about a max gross density per acre of 1.8 gross. Our opening statement within the OCP again talks about our semi-rural character and how we would like to manage growth. Again, we have a special study designation. And also within the context of special designation area, we talk about a comprehensive development plan. I'll get onto what a comprehensive development plan is, but as referenced earlier by the delegation, that's really a neighborhood plan. Okay, so when we go forward with an OCP amendment, there is a legislative document that governs this, and it's the Local Government Act. It stipulates a number of things that an OCP application and an OCP must review. So some of them are housing types. We must refer to affordable housing and have a statement regarding it. A density. So within the application right now, there is by proxy some density definition by saying we have 31 to 3,500. In reality, we need to inform a little bit more on where that density might be and how it might work. Again, phasing. How would an application work with phasing? Another piece from legislational requirement is a housing needs assessment. Anmore went through a housing needs assessment in 2021. We adopted that, and it's something that we now have to review in the context of our OCP to ensure that our OCP aligns with the housing needs assessment and how we might meet those requirements. So, as some of you may or not be aware, the provincial government recently enacted a number of new bills which will directly impact applications going forward through OCPs and development. It's quite frankly a bit of a moving target right now. Local municipalities are trying to understand how it might affect applications and moving it forward. So I just mention it because it's something that we do need to be cognizant of as this process moves forward. And the next piece is a regional context statement. So a regional context statement, this is in relation to Metro Vancouver, and that is, we have one already within Metro Vancouver 2040, and Metro Vancouver 2050 require us to update our regional context statement, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. So just for our housing needs assessment, it was a tool to help guide Anmore's housing policy. It shows within it that there's a missing middle being not single-family dwellings. It talks about row homes, it talks about perhaps apartments, and a different area within Anmore that isn't really serviced right now. We are required to update our housing needs assessment every 5 years, so 2026 is a must. However, the new bills are requiring us to look at the housing needs assessment and see how we will be implementing our housing needs assessment. So that's something else we need to go and look at. I just make a comment within the housing needs assessment. It does note there's a high commuting rate within our community, and I think most people know it's because everyone leaves the community to work, play, and everything else in between. So that's except for living here. So that's a note within there. And again, our housing needs assessment does reference semi-rural character. Okay, so a regional context statement. The regional context statement is a requirement of being part of Metro Vancouver. We are a part of Metro Vancouver, and we are a part of Metro 2050. And so therefore, as part of ratifying 2050, we actually have to produce a new regional context statement. Our regional context statement right now is not in compliance really with 2050, and we need to go back and look at it. And so the other things we have to address within the regional context statement is urban containment boundary, where it is and isn't within the community. So just for context, small parts of the community are within the urban containment boundary right now. That is the middle school, Eagle Quest Middle School, and Anmore Green Estates are also within the urban containment boundary. Another piece, we have to look at our land use framework. So the land use framework is in reference to Metro Vancouver's 2050 land use statement, and in reality that's looking again at the urban containment boundary, general urban, and at our rural designation. You'll see within the bylaw, staff have provided a first draft of the RCS statement. This will require further conversation and updates within it. It's just a first draft. The reason it's within there is that it's for note that we must ensure that our OCP amendment applies to that. Sorry, our OCP applies. And then finally, a neighborhood plan information. So what is a neighborhood plan? I don't know, some of you may or may not heard what a neighborhood plan is. I'll just go to a very high level of what a neighborhood plan does. So a neighborhood plan is another OCP amendment. A neighborhood plan can be contained within this OCP amendment if we wished, or we could run it in conjunction with it. So that would mean two different bylaws. Okay, so that's one piece of it. A neighborhood plan typically will have details about land use. It'll talk about housing types. It'll give you definitions of housing and mixed use uses, institutional, commercial. It'll talk about transportation needs, the parks and amenity needs, the infrastructure that's required and when the infrastructure is required, the economic development within that zone, the cultural context of it, which would include archaeology, and then also you can look at an implementation plan to ensure that what is put on the paper is actually followed through, and we actually have a plan to ensure it comes to fruition. So the application that's before us right now does contain a number of bits of information, but they need to be built upon in staff's opinion. There's more information that's required to ensure that there's more context placed around this development. When, where, and why, I think that's a question to be raised as we go forward. When, again, I kind of note it could be within this application or it could be side by side. Council could decide not to provide a neighbourhood plan. That's within Council's jurisdiction as well. And the reasons why, I've kind of gone through the reasons why. The reasons why is because it gives us more context to ensure that you as Council, if you ratify something, there is a box that the proponent must stay within as they develop the area. Okay, so next steps, I've kind of looked at the recommendation. The recommendation by staff is to provide a pass the first reading. It is the referral to committee. So Committee of the Whole, for those of you who don't know what Committee of the Whole is where Council can have an open debate with staff and with the proponent if they wish, and include members of the public if they wish. On top of that, we're requesting that a community engagement framework be established as part of this process. The reason being that, as we've heard tonight, a lot of the public wish to hear and provide input, and so it helps staff to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our council and of the public. And then following on from that, it would be a development of a second reading. The second reading, for context, is where council actually have their input on what they'd like to see within the amendment. So that's where the conversation comes forward. And so typically a second reading will perhaps look somewhat different to what is before you today after you've gone through and done some more analysis and questions and more clarifications required. So that will typically what happen within the second reading. Okay, the alternatives, as mentioned, I think by Councillor Richardson and some other within the public realm today, is that we as a council, you as a council, sorry, could decide that we don't want to move forward with this process with the proponent, and we'd like to open up our own OCP and review this from our own outlook. Again, there could be a recommendation to develop a neighbourhood plan straight away without going to committee. It's not recommended. I think it's important that council have a conversation in public with the proponent to understand what's going forward. Or the other alternative is not to give a first reading as we go forward. Question?
Can we put the lights back on there?
Yeah, and I'm going to grab my agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boyd. Before I open up to council, just had a few speaking points that I just wanted to reinstill. I want to, before we get started in debating this, I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that first reading is for a bylaw amendment process. It's not approving anything specific at this point in time. First reading is the opportunity for this council to decide whether we want to begin a process to review or consider the proposed amendment. It does not mean we're approving. If first reading is granted, it begins an exploratory process that involves a more thorough assessment of what this amendment and related proposal development means for our community and what changes are needed to village policies like the OCP amendments and the development of a neighborhood plan. So tonight is ultimately a decision on whether we move forward with a process that enables council and our community to learn more about this, what is being proposed for Anmore South and what it means for Anmore. This type of in-depth process is also about what residents have told us and important to them considering a different type of development in Anmore South. And one of the things that came up a couple of years ago when we were going to try and change the OCP was people wanted to know why. This is the why. Also, with a village with such limited resources, first reading moving forward also allows the village to hire consultants and planners at the proponent's expense to analyze this proposal. We don't have that sort of horsepower in our village hall right now to do any of this. And it shouldn't be at the cost of our taxpayers. Council has a fiduciary responsibility to look at all proposals as a landowner. This land is going to get developed. I recognize that some members of our community have already made up their mind about the type of development they would like to see, but I also know that we have a lot of residents who are interested in learning more about the project first. Please don't get hung up on the amount of units. I certainly haven't at this point in time. There's much more work to be made on that. And likely more residents who have not engaged within the village on this topic will become so through the various open meetings and committee work that this will be referred to. So I ask everyone, please be patient as we work through tonight's first decision point. We'll keep the community informed, I guarantee it, about the outcome of next steps and if a decision is made. And we have already gone through that process. We purposely put the signboards out 2 weeks ago. We put flyers out, our own flyers, making sure people are aware of it. I'm so encouraged to see so many people here and the discussions. We have to be respectful. We're all neighbors, and we have to just see where this goes. So with that, I'll open it up to council for any questions they may have of Mr. Boyd. Councillor Wevering.
Just to sort of build on what Mayor McEwen said, I think the important part really is the whole neighborhood plan. That's where we get into the weeds. And as Mayor McEwen said, I'm not hung up on the amount of units. I'm at a very high level at this point, and I think I've been very consistent that I think we need to look at something different. It's an opportunity. Councils before us always thought it was going to be something different. I've lived here for 26 years, and I have all the values of many people in this room. I liked Anmore the way it was. I didn't feel I needed all those services at the time, but things have changed. Every community changes. My kids would perhaps like to move back to Anmore, and I don't recommend that they rent. The housing crisis has only gotten worse. It wasn't an issue 26 years ago. You could buy an acre for $220,000. There's a climate crisis. It brings about change in every community. If Anmore was, I don't know, 10 miles out of Hope, BC, I don't think we'd be having this discussion. This kind of development wouldn't make sense. But our Anmore border is now 8 minutes from a SkyTrain station. I do think we do have to look at something different. As I said, I think the neighborhood plan is where all the magic happens. That's where we have all our questions. That's where the challenges come up. But I'm interested in looking at how we can overcome challenges. And if they can't be overcome, then I guess it may be a no. But I think we need to start the process. As Mayor McEwen said, there's a lot of people interested in this. I think the last election reflected that. And I want to start the process one way or another. So I would be in favor of moving forward with this.
Good. Anybody else? Councillor Cryer.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, I do have a lot of questions, but a lot of my concerns and questions have already been answered, and those that haven't, I look forward to discussing further down the process. I do intend to support the first reading, and I appreciate the work that staff has done. I appreciate the work that the proponent has done in listening to the early needs of our communities to make changes from the original proposal that was brought forward, or the original conversations that were brought forward. So I'm pleased that this is on the table. Yes, we're at the 20,000 plus foot level. There is a lot more to discuss, and there are a lot of concerns that we share with our community, and I look forward to discussing it further and working on it. Thank you.
Good. Any further? Councillor Richardson.
It's not really a question, it's just more of a comment. So I'm 100% agree that the OCP should be redone. It should be done every 5 years.
Okay, sorry, yeah, if you could, yeah, sorry.
I'm in 100% agreement that the OCP should be redone. No question. I was also in complete agreement when the Anmore, I call it the Burger King brochure, came out, because you can have it your way, came out, and we could do this without the developer. It always made sense to me. It still makes sense to me that we, as a resident group, can get together and decide what we want as a community. This is your community. And I think you should have a say before a path kind of gets set out a little bit. I understand that it can all change, it can all go. But when investment starts to happen, it kind of sets directions. So I'm against the first reading. I'm for OCP amendment and changing it to what the people want and complete community engagement with what's going on. I looked into the last OCP when it was done. From the time it started, which was May 16, 2012, to first reading took over 2 years. And there was lots of community engagement in there on all sorts of things. And I think the people deserve that again.
Anybody? Just one point of clarity. The delay on that OCP in 2012 was because the APC committee actually put their pencils down until we had a financial feasibility assessment done for the whole village. So that's why the delay was there. So anyway, please proceed, Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, first of all, I appreciate the sort of background part of it. It's important to understand that we have a fiduciary duty to listen to any landowner. And it's too easy to think about this development as if it's some corporate enterprise. It's a landowner. It doesn't matter who that landowner is. It's a landowner in Anmore, and they deserve the same treatment and fair play and dignity as anyone else. So my mind's not made up, but I'd really like to know what things can be. I don't think, can abdicate our responsibility of being part of a greater community at large, and a greater community that has an obligation to maybe not solve, but at least attack some of the issues around different styles of housing. You know, we have in our strategic statement since at least 2019, we talk about aging in place, alternate housing, diversified tax bases, et cetera, et cetera. This development might address some of those things, might possibly address it. So I think, to me, it would be short-sighted and narrow-minded to at least not move it forward through first reading so that we can hear what's coming at us. So, you know, again, my mind's not made up one way or the other, but I don't understand how you can take a hard position without even hearing what's being proposed. Doesn't make sense to me. So I'm going to be supporting that. Good. One thing I do question, Chris, when you're talking about all your litany of steps, so to speak, have we got a guidebook, or do we have a track record, or no, not a track record, do we have a roadmap to take us through all of that? Because this is all very new for us.
Yes, like we will be approaching best practices of how to apply this OCP amendment, and obviously it's different, right? Like one of the things that's a big difference for Anmore going forward is we're a rural community and we're introducing an urban environment. And just for context, we've done a lot of analysis to see where this has happened elsewhere, and there aren't very many places which have done this that we're aware of. And so it's obviously a big step. And so when you talk about, is there a guidebook? There's best practices, and in reality, we as staff will respond back to what council require and what council's direction is. So that's where we will be giving you recommendations with best practices and next steps to go forward, such as tonight the recommendation before you is go into committee of the whole. That is a best practice for you as council to have an open mic with the proponent to talk through, and then think, once you've had that correspondence, but what your next steps might be. You might decide that that's it, or you might think, hey, we really should start the neighborhood planning process, or we might want to do X, or we might want to do Y. And so we as staff will help guide you with our team and with the proponent to talk about what the best next steps are.
And that step of the committee of the whole is like all other committees of the whole. The public is welcome. They can hear the whole thing. They can be present.
Yes.
So it's completely transparent.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then finally, if we move to this, if we go to this first stage, I think I heard Mayor McEwen say we can start billing the proponent for your resource costs.
Yeah, that's correct. So we use the fees and charges bylaw in relation to that, and our fees and charges bylaw basically states that any costs associated with an application and above the application fee would be borne by the applicant. So that's how we will be passing the costs back to the proponent.
Okay, so, you know, for me, I'm definitely in support. If anyone hasn't been hiding under a rock and they've been reading everything that's being published by the province lately. If we don't do something and keep the steering wheel in our hands, in the hands of our residents, in the hands of the people that live here, I'm fearful the province is going to do something for us, and that doesn't feel very good to me. Thanks.
I think everybody's spoken. If I have some closing remarks, but if we wanted to get the preferred recommendation on the table.
Yep, I'll read it out to you.
If you could read it out.
Yep, so the recommendation would read that the Village of Anmore Official Community Plan Designation Bylaw Amendment number 686-2023 be given first reading, and that Bylaw 686-2023 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with the following items for discussion: Neighbourhood Plan, OCP impacts, transportation impacts, community immunity contributions, public engagement strategy, financial sustainability, and other topics that staff believe to be important for the community to discuss, and that staff bring forward a community engagement strategy in relation to the OCP amendment.
Good. Could I get someone to move that? Moved. Seconded. I'll just give one last opportunity for somebody to speak. Councillor Weber.
Just a total side note, but Councillor Richardson mentioned it. When is our OCP due for renewal, like the general OCP? I'm in favor of moving forward on this because I think this is such a big discussion. I'd like to just have the discussion separately, but I'm guessing we're probably going to have to go into an OCP discussion soon after. Is that correct?
So OCP discussions are engaged by council, and there's not a legislation requirement to do it X amount of years as of right now. But with the new bills enacted, there will be more requirements, and that will be every 5 years. So it's been going on for roughly 10 years, and best practice is at least every 10 years you would open up your OCP to review.
Okay, so it would be coming up relatively soon.
Pretty soon.
Okay.
Any other? Councillor Richardson.
Okay, so there are a few comments made which I looked into specifically for this, and there's a lot of people wondering different types of housing. And the province has made noise about changing things. They had their naughty list. But if you actually look at what they force on people, it's 10 to 12% of the current housing from the 2021 census. Anmore had, I think, about 762. So that means in 5 years we have to build or have allocated 76 homes. That's it. And if you look at what's currently on the books in Anmore, Cordovato has 19 units to build, and they have suites allowed, so that's 38. Bellaterra has not built out 42 of their units. Infill adds another 10 to 30, and interesting enough, Icona themselves, with their RS1 application, have 258 units because of their 86 things. They can each have a suite and a carriage house. If you add that all up, there's 368 units currently on the books in Anmore. That's way beyond anything that the province requires. So we don't have a fear of the province.
Are you done? Anything else? Okay, I will. I just have a few comments. Just in closing comments before I put it to a vote. Number one thing, it was, I guess, a little over a year ago. I sat in this gym and I very publicly stated that I was not in favor of adding any more $4 to $8 million homes on Anmore South, and I said that very publicly. I was also on the council back in 2010 in the old Village Hall, the old Mom Murray household, where this vote came to us about a special study area. And I supported it. So did our former mayor at the time, Hal Weinberg, and others. And it went through. And the premise was that we wanted to do something different down there. Hal's vision was a little bit different, which was a high-tech center, but you know, he certainly was a visionary. I think it's also important, if people want to see where a special study area has been transformed, and that's the Flavel site on the Port Moody waterfront. Now that transition from a special study area went from an industrial to urban. There's going to be about 15,000 people live down on that waterfront, and it's going to make an amazing waterfront on that part. As mayor, I have to look at a couple of things. I have 4 challenges that I see that this village is going to be facing in the years to come. Not this year, not 5 years, and not 10 years, but 20 plus years down. One of them is services. We need to get our own water supply, because right now we're paying about $150,000 approximately a year through through Port Moody, that we do not have a defined agreement on it, and we need that. We also need an opportunity that if ever another Anmore Green Estates arose, there's something for the people on this side of the village to hook into that wouldn't basically bankrupt them regarding sewer. A lot of municipalities that I'm talking to right now and my colleagues are wanting to know how all these services are going to be paid for. And the province is basically dictating they want the municipalities to pay for them. It's their role. We couldn't do that. We have a developer here that's looking, that will pay for them. It's going to be a sort of an exercise in economics as to what their return's going to be, but I want to explore that because I think it's important for our long-term viability. This has been talked about, varying housing choices. It's a big problem we have. I look at our neighbor, Belcarra, and the fact that they can only sometimes get 2 volunteer fire people out to a call, and we're fortunate enough because we do have the suites to be able to get firemen, volunteers in our fire department. It's a big problem. And I hear from a lot of families. This school that we're sitting in right now used to have, when my son and I went here, had 200 kids in it. It's down to close to 100 right now. The third thing is economic viability long term. When we did our last OCP, as I mentioned, we actually, the APC committee, which some members I think are even actually in this room, put it on ice because they could not make those land choice decisions, because that's what the OCP is about, because they didn't know the financial viability of our village with those decisions. And so it was put on hold. We had Van Struth come in, did a thing, and it changed the whole aspect. Before that report came out, everybody was very adamant that an acre was an acre was an acre in this village. I remember when Ravenswood went in, we thought the world was going to come to an end. Now it's the most idyllic street in this community. And the other thing that is this housing crisis, it's not just provincial, it's federal as well. I'm meeting with the federal minister on Friday, and he's not messing around. They're demanding housing being met by all these communities. You know, and our community, we are so fortunate, is 8 minutes away from a SkyTrain station. Major infrastructure that they have put forth and they have funded. So there is going to be a demand. We are already on the top 40 list, not the top 10. We're on the top 40, which means, and including Belcarra, as communities that need to start doing something different. So for those reasons, I will be supporting going through this exercise. And I am so looking forward to, we have a great group of people on all the committees that just got established, a full complement of people to have those discussions about how this moves forward. Like I said, I'm not hung up on the amount of units. I'm not hung up on a lot of this stuff. I don't necessarily know that we need another rec center. I don't know if we need a sports field. I know when I was a councillor here and I was head of the Parks Department, we actually had a parks report done, which is on our website, that says that we couldn't afford a school or a field at the time. But I'd sure like to explore whether adding a certain degree of population is going to do there. This land is going to get developed. It's their right to develop it. They own it. They pay taxes. They're probably one of our biggest taxpayers. So, you know, I'm a big believer in that you want to work with people and see where this plays out. So if this does move forward, one of our first meetings in the New Village Hub, which is so appropriate, will be a committee of the hall. I've already sort of tentatively thought that would be a good thing to do. And that means that council, with a proponent and their planners and engineers, we can have just very frank discussions. And I would strongly, strongly urge you all to come if this does move forward and listen into those conversations and learn about this. Reach out to us on council. You know, I look forward, you know, please send me an email. I've never not responded to an email. So with that, all that being said, I'm going to call the question of the OCP Amendment Bylaw number 686-2023, giving it first reading. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We don't have any unfinished business. I'll go right to the mayor's report. A couple things. Ugly Sweater happened here last weekend. Turned out to be an extremely great success. Councillor Cryer was filling in for me, so I'm going to get her to discuss that. Tomorrow I'll be attending the Chamber of Commerce Christmas lunch. Candy Cane Lane is in action. A big thank you to Georgia Lions. All donations are going to the Eagle Ridge Hospital. Before everybody leaves, I just have one last thing that may be pertinent to everybody. Municipal budgets are starting to come in, and people are starting to talk about the numbers. They're high. They're close to double-digit increases. Coquitlam, Port Moody, City of Vancouver is 7.5%. City of Surrey is going to be about 20%. So the inflationary costs for our municipalities, which are predominantly labor and materials, are significant. So please, we as a council, come to the finance meetings where we will have big discussions over this. It's going to be a challenge moving forward. So December 9th, as I said, Committee of the Whole, I guess, will be coming forward now that the motion is passed. Please come and listen in. It's at the new Village Hub. I will say that as well, that the public is there to listen, not participate in these conversations. There will be no public question period, but they're more than welcome to attend. Progress with the Village Hub for the grand opening, which is January the 7th, is going to be coming, is going amazing. I was in it the other day. Our Chief Sharp was to it for a fire inspection, and it is really looking amazing. And I think people are going to be blown away at the value that we got and the fact that it's coming in very, very close to budget, I believe, or on budget. Yeah. And a big shout out to our Public Works Department, who had our drainage system working perfectly and prevented a lot of flooding with the rain. So big thank you to them. And I know they're prepared now for, if it gets a little colder, we'll have snow. They do. We are so fortunate. We have such a great crew. So that's my mayor's report. I'll now transfer over to councillor's report. Councillor Cryer.
Thank you. Yes, Ugly Sweater Dash was a good day. I think we all woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning and were listening to that rain. It was so noisy on the roof, and I think we all were worried about the day, but the skies broke. The sun was out. It was very well organized, well done. The funds raised go to PAC. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing with the funds, but I believe there's some rock climbing or something. I'm not sure. What's it? Curling rock. There's the rock. But it was a really, really great day, very well executed, almost 400 people that participated and lots of spectators, so that was great. The only other thing on my list is that I too will be attending the Tri-Cities Chamber of Commerce Christmas Luncheon tomorrow, which is one of my favorite events of the year, and wishing everyone a very happy holiday.
Any other? No. Okay. Move on. Chief Administrative Officer's report. Ms. Elrick.
Thank you. Firstly, I just wanted to clarify the Committee of the Whole meeting will be in January. So that's January 9th, not December 9th.
What did I say?
I think it was December, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that we're not reconvening in 4 days from now. It will be after the holidays. So I would like to take the opportunity this evening to formally introduce our new communications coordinator, Carla Shannon, who's at her first council meeting this evening, and she joined the village in October. We're very happy to have her on board. Additionally, we just onboarded a new public works employee, Jeff, this week, so you'll be seeing him in and about the village. We will be posting information about holiday closure, so look for that on the village website. And additionally, there may be some service interruptions as we are going to be, over the next few weeks, moving staff over into the village hall in advance of the grand opening in January. So we'll make sure we keep everybody informed on that. We'll be down from an IT perspective for certain periods of time throughout the next couple of weeks, so we'll let everybody know what is happening there. And I would like to say, being that this is our last meeting here in Anmore Elementary, before we move into the new hall, how thankful we are for Anmore Elementary School and the staff, and how they've gone out of their way to accommodate us. The principal, Michael Chan, has been excellent, letting us set up on off hours, and the custodians, as well as our staff, both the administration staff coming to set up, and our public works staff, who is coming at the end of their day to help set up tables and IT equipment, and council and the public who helps us break this all down at the end of the night. It really does take a village to set these meetings up. So we are grateful for our new space. As Mayor McEwen said, the grand opening will be January 7th from 4 to 7 p.m. So watch for details, and hope to see you all out then. And in the meantime, wishing everybody the best for the holiday season. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Elric. We've got a couple things, general correspondence, emails from the Honourable Peter Julian, New Westminster and Metro Vancouver Board and Brief. I'll now open up for public question period before we break for the holidays. Okay. Oh, there's Ms. Maloney. Okay.
Jody Cook, East Road. I had been waiting for the traffic study to be done, and one of the residents mentioned that it had already been done, and I had looked on the Anmore Village website, but I didn't see it, but I did find it in one of the council meetings. Could I ask if that's a complete report?
There'll be a whole new report done regarding that. That was actually what it was basis. ISL did some work for Port Moody about alternate routes rather than the Ioko Road. So it was not a very detailed report.
Okay, that was my question, because in 2016 there was a traffic study done, and at that time it stated that East and Sunnyside Road were nearing capacity. So I guess that was going to be my question, if that was complete. If maybe when it does come out, will it tell us how many cars are actually using our roadways, and what would be the capacity of the roadway, the allowed capacity of the roadway in 2023-24 versus 2016?
Mr. Boyd.
So some clarification for you. The report that was produced, I want to say a few months ago, that was a road safety audit report, and it was not a traffic study report. It was about looking at numbers of incidents.
Okay, thank you. So there is one that's going to be done still?
We've not been informed by council that transportation study will be done.
Thank
I
you.
think maybe you're referring to something that the proponent would.
So when it is done, then we will have more to do with traffic, and perfect. Thank you.
Ms. Maloney, I think, was next.
Yeah, I'll send a line. No, go ahead.
Nancy Maloney, 1724 East Road. And a short while ago, someone happened to mention, I can't remember which person, that there's a need in Anmore for change, related to housing issues. But the big question is there a desire for change? And if there is a desire for change, what sort of change is it that the residents of Anmore would like to see? Related to that, now quite some long number of months ago, a presentation was done to council. Literally hundreds of residents had signed a petition requesting either a non-binding referendum or a survey related to what residents actually feel about these various proposals for change. Sorry, Doug, are you having trouble hearing? Sorry? No, you're good? Okay. And the reply at that time was, once Icona had submitted a real actual proposal, unlike seemingly the previous politically motivated proposal that was for RS1 housing at the time of the last municipal election. But once there was a real proposal submitted, a survey or non-binding referendum could very likely be done, and that council would support this. But it seems to have been forgotten about. But I want to remind you, and I want to ask, what is the plan for submitting. Obviously, a large number of people are here tonight, but it's a very, very small percentage of the actual population. So we need for all residents to have the opportunity to contribute their thoughts about this. So I'd like to know what the plan is for such a survey or non-binding referendum.
Thank you. Through the chair, I can say that the motion that was brought forward this evening and endorsed by council included a recommendation for staff to bring forward a community engagement strategy related to this OCP amendment. So that strategy will be coming forward to council, and council will be able to weigh in at that time whether they are supportive or want additional measures or some other amendments to the engagement strategy.
Very good. Thank you, Karen. And another thing, several members of council have mentioned their open-mindedness, related to the development of the Icona lands and more south. But I find this actually somewhat difficult to believe, given that in the past, various members of council have overtly supported the need for high density and commercial development and a significant change in the character of Anmore. And at one point, this is now a couple of years ago, but council spent, not in some of the people here on council tonight were on council then, but a large amount of money was spent having some consultant create, whether it was ISL, I can't remember, but a large document was created and sent out trying to convince the residents of Anmore that Metro Vancouver should be approached about changing the designation of Anmore from rural to urban. And at that time, Councillor Turbridge, you even wrote an article where you said this was the time to do it, while John had friends, on the Metro Vancouver board who would go along with this, without a lot of objection. And so it doesn't seem to me that there's an open mind.
Can we just get to a question?
So my question is, how do you expect people, residents who know about the history of your prior position on supporting this sort of development, and then to suddenly change and say, well, no, now we have an open mind?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. I'm not in conflict with any previous statement. I said tonight, and I said before, I want to hear what the options are. So at the time we were talking about changing designation, I was very clear. I said that urban containment allows for the broadest spectrum of options, doesn't mandate any kind of development. It allows us to contemplate lots of development types, different types. I still feel that way.
I think just to follow up on that, that was also at the inception of Metro 2050, where there was a conversation going on about the special containment areas being removed. So council at the time had to have a discussion about what they wanted that, if they were to be removed, what they wanted that designation to be. So that was the purpose of that conversation. So, and that was only Anmore 7. So.
But do current members of council still believe that it's preferable for Anmore's designation to be changed from rural to urban, which was the position at that time?
No. Yeah.
At that time, you wanted all of Anmore changed?
No, we did not. No, we did not. Not true.
Sorry, that's simply not true.
Yeah. So. Okay.
Okay, I'll have another look at that document. Okay, thank you.
Do you want to address? Lisa Johnston on Hemlock. Couple things I want to say.
Questions. We're here just for questions
Okay,
now.
my question is, when you propose your community engagement, can you please make sure that it is in a format that makes everybody feel comfortable to say their piece? I believe we can probably look and see that this is not all of Anmore here tonight. We can see on the various different conversation places, not a lot of people feel comfortable standing up here speaking in front of a group full of people and speaking in front of council. So I'm asking, please, that if you're going to engage the community, that you source, whether it be an online poll, a mail-in poll, something that gives everybody an opportunity to say their bit that doesn't include just standing here. And also you mentioned earlier about community of the whole when it comes time for gathering input, and I may be wrong, but I thought I heard something about we will share that if we feel, or we will include if we feel. So can community of a whole mean that you're sitting down making decisions for us and sharing with us, or you're actually asking and including our input?
Committee of the whole is first of all, I think Ms. Elrick has described the community engagement quite clearly, that we are going to be using all avenues. Regarding the committee of the whole, no decisions are made at a committee of the whole. It's just simply a research and discussion, a very casual discussion. We've had them previously, and we will have that at the New Village Hub, and we welcome their open meetings. Please come and listen in, and if you do have questions,
and I enjoyed it.
If I can just please finish.
Of course.
If I can, and then if you have any questions, specific questions, I would really strongly urge you reach out to council, and we can ask them. But it's an opportunity for council and the proponent to actually have an engagement with people listening in. No decisions will be made. As was mentioned earlier, this is a new process for us, and we're going to be relying a lot on Mr. Boyd from Development Services to be able to move that forward. So, thanks.
Okay. And I guess I have to word this as a question. It would be that I'm hoping you will consider, we all know growth and change is going to happen, so at least consider creating a community that serves the community, that's not only about housing. I think affordable housing is not a dream that we need to sell, because affordable housing is really out there. Affordable sometimes means making it smaller. So if you want to create a community, I'm asking that you please create a community that serves the community. You're going to bring 400 children. We may need a new school. We may actually need a new fire hall that the proponent could build for us. We may need other services, not just homes, as Councillor Richardson recommended, right? Saying that you're going to have commercial spaces in there. Most of the people that live in Anmore have to leave Anmore every day to go to work. We're not going to be working in the coffee shops that are there. We're not going to be working in the library, so forth. We still have to leave, right? Maybe they're going to put in a medical center for the age-in-place people. So just think of more than housing, please. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Dick, you're next.
Jürgen Dürkten again, 1815A East Road. I actually have 3 questions. They're all different. They're not necessarily pertaining to everything discussed today. My first question pertains to the YouTube video for the last meeting, and I'm actually looking for some clarification. Everyone knows that there was a power outage that night on the 21st of November. And according to the official explanation, quote, "Due to the power outage, the live stream of the meeting was interrupted and a video recording of this meeting is not available," end quote. So my questions are, was the live streaming both interrupted and brought to a complete end after the power went off? If so, why did the emergency power system not assist in the case of a resumed live streaming? What can be done to prevent this from happening again? What has happened to this remaining 12 to 15 minute video? Has it been expunged from the historical record? And why is it not posted online with some sort of explanation to the public?
Okay, I've got a few answers, and one of them was, I was curious as well. There's a significant generator that's attached to the school. It's actually missing some parts, and it's not functioning. So there is no generator that was working that night. We were strictly on batteries. The recording is all done is not on batteries, and so there is no recording. So I don't know what else to say.
So the 12 minutes doesn't exist, although I watched it live stream?
Miss Martin?
I'll give you my best opinion on this. From touching the buttons with the stream, is I do have to end and complete the stream, and when the power went out, it broke that process, so YouTube dumped it.
Oh.
So it just didn't create a file. You know, when you do a save as after you make a document, your document's gone if you didn't hit save as. So I think it's the same process with our stream. When we finish tonight, I hit a button to close it, and it makes the file. And when the power went out, we lost that ability.
Wow, okay, thank you very much.
I will tell you, the new Village Hub will have a generator and will be able to kick in during those circumstances.
Okay, that's great to know. Okay, second question, if I may, concerning safety in the village and the Anmore South proposal before us. I'd like to point out that the fellow who attempted to cross East Road at Anmore Green Estates a number of years ago was killed by a dump truck. Dump trucks were always coming out of Hummingbird Lane at the time because of ongoing construction of the middle school. So my question is, how many people will end up the same way because of some 25 years of construction for Anmore South? Are there comprehensive plans for safety? And may I offer a suggestion? Why not draw on the community, as was mentioned just before me, as a source for crossing guards during school hours? Toronto has crossing guards. Even the community of Brighton, Ontario, where my mom lives, has them. That's one. And the final question, on a more social note, I'd like to point out that April 22nd is Earth Day. Why doesn't the village organize the community, including Scouts and the Garden Club, a village cleanup around that date? This way, the litter and the garbage that accumulates on our streets over the winter, and believe me, because I do pick it up, there's a lot of it. And it can be cleaned up in one fell swoop. It's a way of showing our care for the planet and also for our community. We could even make it an annual event, a kind of once a year spring cleanup, followed by hot dogs at the hub. Thank you.
Second question was about traffic safety, and yeah, I was there right after that accident on East Road. So not exactly as you described it. The gentleman was wearing earbuds, did not hear it when he was going to cross the road. So it's as unfortunate as, but I guarantee you that traffic safety will be a paramount of one of my questions coming as this Anmore South thing moves forward. The second thing regarding what you just said, I would strongly support you, and hopefully maybe that's something that you have April 22nd, write one of your brilliant articles into the Anmore Times promoting it, and I think it would be great. I think it would be great for the community, and I thank you for the work you're doing in regards to, you know, keeping our community clean.
Thank you. The one other remark I want to make, though, is about crossing guards. When I was in my mom's town, I was speaking to the crossing guard, and he was longtime counselor, and I think it would be a great retirement plan for some. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cresswell.
Sorry. Dick Cresswell.
Pull that down a little. Yeah.
Dick Cresswell, 1608 East Road. I'll give you a break. The last speaker asked 3 questions, and I'll ask 2. First of all, I believe that this is a philosophical thing, I guess maybe a principle, that if you give people the right information, reliable information, accurate information, genuine information, they will make the right decision as a group. And so I'm asking council if they'll commit now. Oh, by the way, I should say one other thing. I'm in favor of the first reading of the application, because that's information. And I hope that it will be distributed. But I would also like a commitment from the council at this time, when the decision is made, the major decision to go from rural to urban, or another major decision, that you will conduct a referendum. Now that's the first question. Will you conduct a referendum at that time? Second question is, I have heard that from various sources in the council over the years, that there's no such thing, or you can't enforce a binding referendum. Can you confirm whether or not that's true?
I can. The only binding referendum is on borrowing.
Okay. Is that in the Municipal Act?
Yeah.
Okay. So would you give us a commitment to have a referendum on major decisions that council is making that will affect this village for the future.
Who are you asking?
The council.
The question came up, and this was asked several times, if I would commit to a referendum on rural versus urban, and I've very clearly stated that I wouldn't, for many reasons. I've written a few articles in the Anmore Times as to why I wouldn't. I think the big issue is what's going to be built there, and that doesn't answer that question. We're elected to make these decisions. I am very committed to making a good decision, as you mentioned, Dick. Good information yields good results. We're very committed to the public process, which is another reason why I move this forward. It's our job to make these decisions.
But the essence of democracy is that individuals can contribute to making a decision on very important issues that affect all of them. And you do not represent us as individuals to make our own personal decisions. You were elected, of course, to be our representatives, but we didn't give up our right to make decisions.
Okay, well, let me answer your question this way. As Mayor McEwen said, it's not a binding referendum anyway. So what we did with the Village Hall, we did a statistically valid survey, which was essentially the information gathered, whether we thought it was a good idea and the size of the Village Hall, and that survey helped us make that decision. It was made very clear to us what we needed to build and how much we thought we should spend.
Okay, so we know your position.
I have said in the past, before the last election, you got to remember, a referendum, an election is a referendum, and people put us back in these seats to make this decision. I've always been committed to this at great expense to my personal health at times. This is a very stressful process for us all, and we're all very committed to doing it properly. I have said in the past that if I really felt that there was, it was 50-50 in the village and we just couldn't decide on the actual proposal, I would consider a referendum, which is essentially a survey anyway, so it's kind of the same thing.
Well, actually it isn't. And an election is not a referendum. A referendum is a referendum. And I think on major issues like this, if you are willing to provide the complete information so that we can make a decision, we will probably make the right decision. But I think we have to have a referendum. Now, if you say there can't be a binding referendum, then so be it. But I would like a commitment that there would be a referendum. I mean, if you choose not to adhere to the results of the referendum, that's your business. And as you said, you don't believe in a referendum, okay, but what about the rest of the council?
I have no issue with a referendum.
Yeah. Pardon?
I have no issue with a referendum. I
You
think
have-
people
you have
should
no
get
what?
their say.
I didn't quite catch
I
it.
have no issue with having a
Oh,
referendum. I
okay.
think they're fine, especially on major decisions like this.
Councillor Cryer.
I don't believe the land designation from urban to rural is a question that can be asked on a referendum. Questions such as, if I understand correctly, and I probably don't have all the information, I don't know if you have more of the information on it, but it's very expensive to put on a referendum, and I don't think we'll get the answer that we want by just saying, do you want Anmore South urban versus rural? I happen to agree with Councillor Weberink that an election is a sort of referendum because we were elected to sit here or not elected because no one else chose to run. We're also at this table to do what's best for the future of the village. And we get all of the information, we listen to all of the information, and we weigh the pros and the cons, and that's what we do, is make the best decision with the information that we have for the village. And I know every single one of us at this table cares very deeply about this village, and we live in this village as well. I don't think a referendum is appropriate for the Anmore South urban versus rural. I know that it costs a lot of money to put on a referendum. I don't think it's a good use of our money, and it's not binding.
Well,
we're going to have to move on here. I'll just, Councillor Trowbridge.
I'll try to make it brief. Dick, one of the issues with the referendum in general is you have to frame the question in a way that people actually understand the issue. And when you come to something like designation, most people, I would say, in this room don't understand the implications of a designation change. So rather than a referendum, I understand what you're getting at, and I respect what you're getting at, incidentally. But rather than a referendum, I would prefer an ongoing dialogue that we've been talking about, and I question Mr. Boyd about, where we're talking to the community. Referendum's a vote. If you want that individual voice that you talked about, my preference is that we're sitting in a room and we're having dialogue and you express your individuality and we take that into consideration. I think that's much more valuable than a referendum on a question that will largely be misunderstood. Once we've had that dialogue and everyone has the opportunity to understand what designation change does do and what it doesn't do, then it would be a more valuable question to have a vote on. And you could do that with a survey like we did with the hub.
I'm not asking for a referendum now. I'm asking for a referendum at the time when we all have the same information. And you will have information and you'll give it to us. If it's accurate, then because it's such an important issue, I think that we should all have an opportunity to voice our individual, express our individual views on such an issue. And we don't give up our right to express our views. We're delegating you to represent us, but not to take away our right to speak.
I guarantee you the public engagement will make sure that your thoughts and values are well represented.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, one other thing, Kim, I noticed that you mentioned that you will communicate with us. Nobody, well, very few people on council have communicated with me. I don't know about the other people in the room. Pardon?
Pardon me?
You have. I know that, but I said very few. Thank you.
Anybody else left for public question period? And then we're going to adjourn.
Hi, Ginny Hamilton, 2010 Sunnyside Road. My question was about the sidewalk. I read that the plans are to renew from Summerwood Lane to East Road, and I'm just wondering why that plan isn't to extend further down Sunnyside, as I have concerns about the safety where I live on Sunnyside.
Great question.
Okay.
One that I asked our engineer today why that hadn't been progressing. But before I turn it over to him, budget was a limit. There's only so many meters we could do. So, Mr. Boyd.
Yeah, that's correct. So there's only so much. We actually got provincial funding for that section, and for the application that we sent in, it was from Summerwood up towards East Road. The reason that section in particular is because I would suggest that's perhaps the most treacherous piece right now of that piece that's there.
But it is a sidewalk. We have none where I am.
Oh, so further down, yeah. So in relation to that piece, yeah. So it's kind of like a bang for buck perspective right now of trying to get some of this pieces up, and knowing where Anmore South may or may not go as well, that could actually have an impact on where infrastructure gets built as well. So that's the kind of thought prevailing as we made the decision where it should and shouldn't go.
Sorry, I was mistaken as well. That we've talked about that a while, and we thought because the road is not even properly engineered and needs a bunch of work. So we aren't even sure with this proposal if it will mean moving that road.
Right.
So that's
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is
part of the reason I voted for you, because it was your little statement.
Yeah,
so
we are.
had to
Yeah.
that.
Thanks, Jamie.
Sorry, just to provide clarity on that piece, we do actually have a regional long-term framework of how we actually want to produce a multi-user pathway from the very end of Sunnyside all the way up the village and to the other end of the village through East Road. So it isn't that we've forgotten about you, it's just you're later on in the phasing of it.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Hi, Whitney Robinson, 2855 Sunnyside. I had a question about what Anmore, maybe this hasn't been addressed yet, but what Anmore is going to decide, or if they have a decision about what affordability looks like. When we talk about the Iacona project and what adding affordable housing is, it's my understanding that there is no definition of affordable housing as such in relation to incomes of the region. So if we're going to say that we're going to add a bunch of affordable housing that would hopefully broaden the ability of people to move here and live here, it certainly would be great to have that something as an established threshold before we approved any affordable units.
Great question.
Yeah.
It's on my list.
Okay.
What is affordable?
Yeah. I would love it if Anmore would be able to facilitate something that was like in there way before somebody decided to change it.
One of the questions I have as well is I'd like to see rental.
Yeah.
I think it's important that people.
And not market rental, because I'll tell you what, $3,000 for a one-bedroom ain't it.
But, that's, what we're facing right now with carriage suites right now. I'm shocked, and I monitor them on a monthly basis. And there's only, the other day there was only 2 available.
Yeah.
I look at that as regarding, the volunteer fire department. Young volunteers in their, young mid-20s to 40s, which is the ideal candidate.
Yeah.
How are they able to live? It's a big, and that will be one of the things that I will really be seeing about how we can secure some housing for younger families and like you said. So great question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So this actually was a great question, I agree.
Could you name and address again, please?
Simona Niculescu, 2041 Bellwood Avenue. First question, I'm quoting for Anmore OCP policy, page 18. In consideration of the future, any development of the IOCO lands should strive to achieve the highest levels of neighborhood performance relating to minimizing environmental impact, limiting energy requirements, and related greenhouse gas footprint. How is cutting of the forest in agreement with minimizing environmental impact?
Yeah, that'll all be part of the process that we're going to engage
Second question.
in now.
Okay, second question. Tonight, there were a few people addressing the housing crisis in BC. The housing crisis actually is an affordable houses crisis. It's about affordable housing, not housing in general. And I'm quoting from the Anmore OCP amendment. Anmore South page 26, anticipates a range of housing types including rental and below market with 15% of rental, of which 20% will be rented at below market rate to support available housing. 20% of 15% means 3%.
Again, you're getting ahead of
So
this process
how is
right
this-
now.
how is
We
this-
have no idea, and these are discussions that we're going to start engaging in right now.
Yeah, but that is a valid question. So, because one of the, these are 2 very valid questions. One of them is the environmental impact. How is this in agreement with the OCP policy? And second, one of the reasons I understand that the OCP amendment is moving forward is that we'll provide affordable housing also. And this is only 3% of the development. This is what it means, 15% of 20%, only 3%.
I have nothing further to say, sorry. That'll all be worked out as the process evolves.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
So nothing to, there is no answer to my question.
Well, relative to the environment, currently we mandate that 20% tree retention. So most of the people in this room that live in Anmore have removed 80% of the trees on their property. This proposal proposes to save 50%.
No.
So
no.
Please let him speak, okay?
No, that's not true.
I will
It
ask
is true.
Yes.
It's 47%. So I'm answering your question, not actually asking you one. So relative to the rest of our community, it's very effective relative to tree retention.
Okay.
And that's all I have to
that
say.
is not tree retention. The 47% is green space, which will be created after the cutting of the forest. I quote, page 6.
That's not true.
So, an 86 lot suburban division plan with large homes on private services has been approved in principle by the village, which will result in clearing of the vast majority of the forest, privately owned riparian areas. So the green spaces they are talking about, the 47%, are the green spaces they will create after the cutting of the forest.
Very appreciative of them doing that.
Thank you.
Page 26 of the amendment.
Thank you. Okay, motion to adjourn. Before I do that, I just want to wish everyone a happy holidays. Thank you all for coming out. Please, there's going to be meetings in the future, so look forward to have a happy new year. Everybody be safe, and thanks again. Motion to adjourn. Move second. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And a big thank you to the school.